All right, go for it.
Good morning, everyone. It's one and only V the Guerrilla Economist coming to you live with our main guy, Harley Schlanger. He needs no introduction. You can find him on LaRouchePack.com, .com, and as well as the SchillerInstitute.org. Harley, welcome. It's been a nutty week. Lots of things going on. We have shills everywhere. We have nut jobs, not only in the UN like Nikki Haley, but we have that Kay Bailey Hutchinson crazy woman in NATO. Just all sorts of craziness. The maniacal mustache John Bolton is at work somewhere, planning and plotting all sorts of nefarious things. We got Pence blaming blaming China for microchips that are basically stealing American information. Meanwhile, we all know where that technology started from. Where do you want to begin, Harley? This is it's insanity out here. Please help us make sense.
I think this charge that China is working through Apple and Google and other social media. It's actually the social media who are the ones stealing our identity.
Correct.
So, the idea that somehow the Chinese are going to, what are they going to do? Get us to buy Chinese goods? We already have to because we've shut down American manufacturing.
Correct.
So, these arguments just show the desperation of a collapsing ruling elite. And they're only elite because there are a small number of them and because they've had power for especially since the Cold War period, and then almost complete power since the end of the Cold War, because you have the same people running the Federal Reserve System, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the same people who are running the intelligence communities in Britain, the United States, and NATO. So it's a small group who are operating on the basis of a drive to destroy every nation state on the planet. And ironically, whether people like him or not, the man who stands in the way of that right now, Donald Trump is one of them. Putin is one of the other ones. Yeah. And you have Putin and Trump, who represent an alternative to a collapsing bankrupt system which is heading toward war. And I think I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, but one of the top former defense establishment figures in Germany, Willy Wimmer, made a comment. He said, if Trump is impeached, there will be world war in 2019. And, people who are supporters of Trump don't realize that. I don't think they've fully internalized that his fight against the deep state is a fight against a crowd that is prepared to go to nuclear war. The Kay Bailey Hutchison comments are somewhat typical of that. Bolton, Haley, people like that who are completely unhinged make it clear that these guys are thinking about these things. The current head of U.S. military and NATO, I think it's Scaparrotti or something like that, said we're already at war with Russia. And the British defense minister said that we better act quickly or the Baltic states will be lost to a Russian invasion. You didn't even have that kind of insanity during the Cold War.
Never.
No. So these guys, and what they're fearful of is that what was started by Trump with the standing up against the deep state, not capitulating to the blackmail. The blackmail wasn't coming from Putin. It was coming from Brennan, from Obama, from Clapper, from the Democratic Party. He didn't capitulate. And then not only that, he launched a counterstrike, including his threats to declassify. And I think it's quite instructive that the British crawled to Rod Rosenstein, the British and the Australians, begging him to beg Trump to not declassify. And what could be declassified that would somehow harm British intelligence? That Christopher Steele, who supposedly retired in 2009, is still working with British intelligence? I mean, that's obviously what they're afraid of. Alexander Downer, the High Commissioner from Australia to the United Kingdom, who's now been exposed as an MI6 CIA FBI operative who was deployed to set up George Papadopoulos. So everything we've said about, that you and I have discussed about Russiagate is coming out in the open. And, you know, the former I think he's the one of the chief attorneys for the FBI, James A. Baker, supposedly spilled his guts during his private session with the Congress, acknowledging that the FBI knew that the Steele memo was fraudulent. So it's all coming out. Now, the question is, what good does it do if the American people are focused on the alleged sexual escapades and drinking bouts of Brett Kavanaugh 30-something years ago? Now,
well, Harley, we found a high school napkin on which he wrote that he is thinking about throwing ice cubes at someone at school. Yeah. It's dangerous. This guy's not fit, Harley. He's not fit.
Well, I wonder what Chuck Schumer was doing when he was 18 and 19, and who knows what Di-Fi and Nancy Pelosi were doing back then. But you don't even have to go back that far with them. Look what they're doing now. They're trying to run a coup against the president of the United States.
Yep.
Now, what's more dangerous? Some guy who was drinking a lot as a high school student, who 30-some years later may be a Supreme Court justice, or U.S. senators, intelligence operatives working covertly to overthrow the votes of the American people. And I think this is where the counterstrike has to be much more forceful. Now, I thought what Trump said in Mississippi and Tennessee in his two most recent outings were pretty good. He told people, vote as if I were on the ballot and you were voting for me. Because he knows that if the Democrats can pull off a victory on November 6th, that it's only a matter of time before people like Maxine Waters and Al Green are going to be on television 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, talking about why Trump is a criminal who should be impeached and thrown in prison. So the American people have to take this seriously. It's not just impeachment. It's not just Trump. It's your future. The people who are out to destroy the 2016 election results have another intent. They intended to have Hillary Clinton in there. They didn't get it. Maybe they'll settle now for Mike Pence, who's sounding more and more like Hillary Clinton.
You know, the question is, how do these neocons still exist in the Trump administration? Why aren't they gone? Why are they not gone? You know, this is what befuddles me, and I think it befuddles a lot of people as well, Harley.
Well, it is a bit befuddling, and I've talked to some people who know Trump, and they say he's not a great detail guy. That he doesn't really know who his friends are, and in some cases, look, he was impressed that Bolton would run his mouth against Iran nonstop. So we end up with Bolton as a national security advisor. Now look who Bolton replaced. McMaster was trying to get more troops into Syria. In fact, McMaster at one point was proposing 250,000 U.S. troops in Syria. So the problem is you've got in both the neoconservative and in the left Democratic grouping insane lunatics who are committed to a geopolitical regime of war, regime change, false flags, chaos, austerity. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the most surprising things to me here in Germany is to see the Social Democrats, whose raison d'etre, who were created originally as a party to defend the rights of working people, who were among the first to push through policies for retirement pensions and things of that sort. They've joined with the bankers in calling for austerity against working people and saying that there are too many benefits in defending the savings accounts of basically working people. Now, whatever happened to the idea that the Social Democrats were slightly to the right of the Bolsheviks, but were somehow in that same arena? The left and right have been turned upside down. Schumer as a Democrat, is as much in favor of these wars as George W. Bush.
Correct.
So the good thing, V, is that it's now out in the open increasingly. Now, what changed recently is this in the Kavanaugh hearing, is that I think some of the Republicans who have been anti-Trump, like Flake and Sassy of Nebraska, maybe they're taking a look at what's coming down the pike if you end up with a Democratic House and a slight switch toward the Democrats in the Senate. They're beginning to realize that things will go out of control very quickly. But they're not with Trump. They're not for an American system, physical economy solution. They're still with the bankers. And so the tough job, and this is a job that you and your colleagues have, that I and my colleagues have, is to get the American people to think better about economics, to understand that money is not the central feature of an economy. Money is something that is produced so that an economy can function. But if you don't have production, if you don't have science, if you don't have credit, then you can have all the money in the world and people are going to starve to death. So I think we've got a big job on our hands to educate people to understand how there's been a deliberate attempt to destroy their ability to think, so that you have neoliberals and neoconservatives in all the major positions in both parties and inside the circles of power in the government, including, as you just pointed out, inside the Trump administration.
Yeah, absolutely. Harley, what's your recent take on not only the Chinese trade war, but also the situation in Syria? How is that progressing?
Well, the China situation is still very mixed. And the reason for that is that Xi Jinping and Trump both want an agreement in Korea. They know that the peace on the Korean Peninsula depends on bringing North Korea into the Belt and Road Initiative, because what Kim was most excited about in his meeting with Trump was the idea that North Korea can become prosperous. And that's why he's also been so friendly and endearing with his counterpart in South Korea, President Moon. The idea of peace through development, that you would hook up 4 different rail lines from South Korea and China and Russia going through North Korea. So North Korea would become a transshipment port center on the new Silk Road. This would bring jobs. It would bring physical production. It would bring cooperation. It would end the pariah status of Kim's kingdom and create a totally new situation. And both Xi and Trump know that they have to talk to each other to do that. Now, also, the Chinese do recognize that they've been the beneficiary of rotten trade deals. They weren't the ones who made the trade deals. I mean, this is something Americans have to keep in mind, including Trump, because he's said this before. The trade deals were made by the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas. They were made on behalf or through the World Trade Organization on behalf of corporate cartels and monopolies that don't give a damn about the American people or the Chinese people. So we have a common interest in getting to a fair trade agreement. Question is, how do you get there? Do you get there by punishing China? I don't think that will work. Do you get there by trying to undermine the Belt and Road Initiative? That won't work either, because it's too far in progress. In fact, I just saw a report that 96% of the projects that the Chinese unveiled a year ago at the Beijing Belt and Road Conference, 96% of them are underway, and some of them are already operational. So they're moving. What's not moving is economic development in the United States. There's a stock bubble. Banks are still trading derivatives and making money on each trade. But the real economy in the United States has not moved. There have been a few more manufacturing jobs, which is good. But the wages are still pretty much stagnant. Productivity is stagnant. So we have some work to do on this. The United States and China could work together. And probably the most promising thing was Kudlow saying a couple of days ago that he thinks Trump and Xi Jinping will meet at one of the upcoming international meetings. If that takes place, that would be very, very positive. Now, as to Syria, look, Putin holds the upper hand on this. he has brought about a situation where the terrorists are in deep trouble. There are only a few of them left. They're hardcore terrorists, and by a few, I mean a few thousand who are holding people hostages. But Putin just pulled another flanking maneuver with Erdogan on Idlib by saying, okay, we won't move in and wipe out the terrorists yet. We'll create a secure corridor. Basically, Russia is setting up a no-fly zone. And they can do it because they're working with the Syrian government, so it's not an infringement on sovereignty, which Hillary Clinton's proposed no-fly zone and Obama's proposed no-fly zone would infringe on Syrian sovereignty and would be against international law. So the Russians have created a situation where Trump is now saying once again, look, I just want to get out of Syria. We want to crush the terrorists, but we don't want to kill too many civilians. So go ahead and do it. If you can do it without killing a lot of civilians, go ahead and do it. So I think we're heading toward the finish line in Syria. It's not going to be easy because you have some hardcore jihadists who may still be getting weapons and arms and resources from sections of the intelligence community that are tied to the Saudis and the British and the Israelis. So here's the irony. The United States is linked together with the Saudis and the Israelis in providing backup support for terrorists who threaten American lives, threaten lives of people in Europe. And I think Trump needs to make this more clear as to why he wants to get out of there. But again, he supposedly, or it was announced, actually, I don't know who announced this, maybe it was Pompeo, that Trump and Putin may be meeting soon. Trump and Kim Jong-un may be meeting soon. This just drives the globalists crazy because Trump basically, they say, well, Trump has an inflated ego because he can make a difference by talking with these guys. Well, did it make a difference for the positive not talking to them and threatening them? Trump has had more discussions with Kim Jong-un, more openings now toward the Iranians, in some ways working through the Italians. So I think to go back to Willy Wimmer, who said, you get rid of Trump and you're facing World War III, I think that's true.
Yeah.
It's not that Trump is so great, it's that the enemy is so damn insane and bent on either imposing their geopolitical arrangements or blowing up the world. And that's the reality of the situation. So people should use this time between now and the midterm elections to get out the vote and do it not for the individual Republicans, but against the coup. A large turnout, like we're seeing in these rallies in Tennessee and Mississippi and Missouri, a large turnout of people who say, we're not going to let you take our country away from us, will defeat the Democrats and scare the hell out of the never-Trumpers in the Republican Party.
Absolutely right. The midterms are right around the corner.
Yeah.
Harley, what is your take? A lot of people are talking about a blue wave. Personally, I think it's going to be a blue drizzle if every American mobilizes and go out there and make their vote count. And Harley, also, if you could expand on the reality, the fact, the truth about how important these local and statewide elections are and how that it is the biggest kink in the armor to these deep staters.
All you have to do is look at what made the deep state hysterical. It's that people turned out and voted for Trump in 2016, and that people rejected their hand-picked candidate, Hillary Clinton, and rejected the mythology of the great healer and economist Barack Obama. The fact that the people are not as stupid and manipulated as the establishment would like them to be. In fact, that the establishment is facing an insurgent wave all over the world. So before there was a blue wave, there was a rebellion against the established parties. There was Brexit, there was Trump, there was the elections in Italy, in Austria, in Mexico, rejection of the status quo, the post-Cold War order of unilateral demands from the transatlantic bankers. That's all been blown apart, but they haven't been defeated. They're pretty resilient. They have a lot to lose. I mean, if the truth comes out, not only will they go to jail, but they'll be known throughout the rest of history. People like John Brennan will be up there with Goebbels and Goering in terms of people who facilitated genocide and evil. So they have a lot at stake. They're not going to give up. Now, I think what's important for people to realize is that nothing is written in stone. Whether there's a blue wave or a blue drizzle or the status quo sustained or even a Republican gain hasn't been determined yet. That's why they're going so crazy over the Kavanaugh case, to basically say that if you vote Republican, you're in favor of someone raping your daughter. It's the most extreme form of psychosexual blackmail against a population that I've ever seen. And why are they doing it? Because they don't want to talk about what happens if the declassified documents come out and show exactly that the FBI, the CIA, and the Justice Department were working with British intelligence to overthrow the election of the US president. So they don't want that out. So if we go out and campaign by saying, defeat the Democrats, defeat the coup, so that we can expose these people and run them out of office and put them in jail, then we have a chance to reverse what the pundits are calling the blue wave. Now, my other point on this is a simple one. These are the same people who said Hillary Clinton was inevitable. I'm sure you've seen, and many of your listeners have seen the clips of the election eve coverage when people like Wolf Blitzer nearly lost his beard. They couldn't believe it. They're watching these screens, and the John King of CNN looked as though he was being anally raped. They couldn't handle it. Now they're saying, oh, don't worry, the people are really with us. Well, are they? Are the American people really behind the perverts and liars at CNN and the Washington Post and the New York Times? Really? I don't think so. But we better make sure that people know that they're not. And that means move heaven and earth between now and November 6th to defeat this coup. And I ask people to go to our LaRouche PAC site, where we've been covering this from the very beginning. The day Trump was elected, Lyndon LaRouche said they're going to try and overturn this election. And he said, you've got to watch the British. It's the British. And this was before we knew about Christopher Steele or knew much about Christopher Steele. So LaRouchePAC.com has a lot of the details, a lot of the information you need, including on who is Robert Mueller, a career hitman for essentially British intelligence and organized crime, who covered up for the U.S. administration's support for terrorism. We also have put forward an economic alternative, physical economy, investment in infrastructure, rebuilding American manufacturing. And by doing that, increasing American wages, not by people winning the lottery on the stock market, but by people actually doing real labor and real production and adding value to the economy. So look at our website. People can get on to my blog. Almost every week, I write an article that goes into these important issues. And if you want to be in touch with me, and V, I'm getting a lot more of Rogue Money listeners sending in emails and carrying on ongoing discussions. So I greatly appreciate that. You can reach me at harleysch@gmail.com. And as your listeners now know, I will respond. So harleysch@gmail.com and LaRouche PAC. And let's deal a crippling blow to this gang of geopolitical, neoliberal, neocons, neo-Nazis, neo-everything. I mean, this is a gang that has to be shut down.
I agree wholeheartedly. Harley Schlanger, thank you so much for being on, Harley. Once again, folks, you can find him on LaRouchePAC.com as well as the SchillerInstitute.org. And folks, it's always a pleasure. It's always refreshing to hear a voice of clarity. and that is Harley Schlanger. Harley, thank you so much, my friend.
All right, talk to you next week.
Definitely, man. And God bless you, and God bless the new baby and your family.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Take it away, CJ.